Before, let's try to proceed. The last section. So we will proceed for section 4, commercial training. I will moderate the section and have the pleasure to have near me three important players for the sector: EMSA, a great organization, the company Misty Cruise, and also the company Aeroman. So this section will talking about the commercial training. The first speaker will be Jaime Veiga. Jaime Veiga has got a PhD for the Cardiff Business School of the Cardiff University on marine policy, a master from World Maritime University on maritime safety administration, and a bachelor from the Portuguese Maritime Academy on management and maritime technology. After a single career, he worked in a maritime consultants and academy. Before joining EMSA, he worked for a Seafarers International Research Center at Cardiff School of Social Sciences and at the Fresh Tea company. Since 2005, January, he has been working for the European Maritime Safety, having established the centralized system of monitoring, education, training, and certification for seafarers, being currently coordinator of the human element activities. He has worked in several countries worldwide and has published in the different journals. He's also been member of the Nautical Institute since 1992. So thank you very much, Sam, for being here and do the presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. You forgot the most important, considering that we're talking from the UK. 3 times finisher of the London Marathon, once of the Madrid Marathon. So this is also part of my other activities, because I learned that some people were talking about sports activities. So I'm still training, not for the marathon, and my coach is Paulo Guerra, was the last European champion cross country. So if someone runs, so can join this team, and we have some training with a high-level expert in running, not maritime. But this is to start. So the Nautical Institute, yes, I've been a member of the Nautical Institute for 30 years, so more than the half of the time of the Nautical Institute, which is quite good. And as João mentioned, I've been working for EMSA since January 2005. And at the time we started, still in Brussels, we started establishing a system for verification of the implementation of the STCW Convention in non-EU countries, which was later extended to monitor the implementation of the directive that transposes the STCW into EU legislation in 2007. After that, we expanded our activities. We started as training of seafarers, then moved to standards of seafarers. And now we have within the unit that visits inspections, human element, this sector of human element, which is now called activity. And we deal in a much broader way with human element in shipping. We look at the MLC and at various issues, including mass, that was referred here before, and mass seafarers, but mass is without seafarers. What are they talking about? What are they doing? But in fact, we are also looking, at different type of these mass vessels, because not all of them will go, as my dear friend Carlos Serpa Carvalho presented before, without people on board. There are some who have seafarers on board, so it's also something that we have to look, and particularly in the STCW, as I will talk about after. But we also are now looking at something I'm not going to talk today, which is related with mass. We have launched a study where we are identifying with the university which is working with us in Bremen, at the different capacities, standards that are needed for those who are to work ashore in the, let's call, control of mass. So there are some standards that exist nowadays in the convention for seafarers, but there are not such a thing for people who are to work ashore. We are looking at this, but this is not yet what I'm gonna talk. Mario referred here the system we have for visits and inspections, and one of the areas is the STCW, and in terms of the STCW and the directive 2022/993 on training of seafarers, we have since 2005, when we did the first inspection, which was quite interesting. First, because it was the first inspection. Second, because it was Croatia. And third, because the person was on the other side we were inspecting is our present executive director. So hopeful, and fortunately it went well, because otherwise I would be in trouble today. But since 2005, we have visited approximately 80 countries and more than 400 maritime education and training institutions, and produced a series of reports that we had to read. We had even not going there, I read. Mario, since he's with us in 2013, has so had to read the reports. So we created broad knowledge in terms of what's going on in the world on training of seafarers. And it is precisely because of that I want to focus today, and everything that I'm going to focus today in this short presentation, I hope it doesn't take that long, is based on our experience. And because of our experience, we had the brilliant idea to propose to the member states why we don't start a comprehensive review, or propose for a comprehensive review and revision of the STCW Convention and Code, because the last time was in 2010, that's the last big comprehensive review, and the world changed, the vessels changed, both in terms of the part of the navigation as well as the propulsion. So there is the need to look at what is required nowadays in the convention, and let's try to go for that. And we did it. We worked together with stakeholders, ship owners, trade unions, the EU member states, and some countries not part of the European Union, but that joined us to submit a paper to the IMO. And among those countries one of them was the Philippines. Everybody likes the Philippines, but also Singapore, Canada, Australia, Ghana, the International Association of Maritime Universities, the ICS, so they were all co-sponsors with us. The UK was to be, but then there was some delay, nothing to do with Brexit, it was just more administrative matter, so they supported only during plenary session. But anyhow, we have now a comprehensive review and revision of the convention ongoing, and this will proceed at least for the next 4 years until there is finally a diplomatic conference. And what I want to focus here today is one of the proposals we intend to put, if meanwhile we are not killed in the meantime. And this is a bit of where the presentation of Captain Antonio Padron meets the presentation of Wärtsilä. So this is one of the areas we would like to put forward, and it is in line with what was discussed here. There is a shortage of seafarers, which I put a question mark on here. This is based a lot on the studies of our colleagues from BIMCO, ICS, with the University of Warwick. We could discuss a bit that methodology, and since 1990, there have been 5 years updates. We worked with them in the last one, 2020, and there are some loopholes over there. Also because when you project something and then suddenly the type of vessels change, the trade changes. So there are some issues in that respect. I have some doubts, but it's not to discuss here, maybe another opportunity, about the 1,000 numbers of shortage of seafarers that exist. But there is a problem, and this was raised here. The problem may have some problems because of the special military operation of Vladimir Putin, or the war in Ukraine, that creates some problems. But in general, we need to be careful when you talk about those numbers when you talk about shortage of seafarers. I also, and here in the afternoon, Andre, I think was you mentioning about the problem of junior officers that don't have experience. And then we start thinking, all this industry is completely nuts. They say they don't have people, and then when the people are there, they don't employ them. Then we have cadets or students that need to complete 1 year of onboard training, and then the industry does not allow them to complete. So we have to question all these things and see where we are. But definitely, now going to the cadets and the students that are in the maritime academies, and this we have seen worldwide, this problem. Because we go, last time, I was in Turkey, Tunisia, in Asia, in countries in Europe, and they ask us, how can we allow these kids to work on board, to complete their onboard training? And in fact, there is this problem all around. And there are some companies that have vessels, and maybe they would like to have these cadets. Maybe they don't have berths for the cadets, so they cannot be employed on board. In other situations, there are no national fleets in some countries, so they have to rely on having the students and cadets employed on board vessels from other flags or from foreign ship owners, and that creates another problem. So what can be done? There should be a solution if there are no vessels. So if they cannot work that period completely, so why not to reduce that period? And I propose this, my colleagues prepared the submission, and we were told, wait, this we cannot go for that. So in our submission for the comprehensive review, we had to put something lighter. I even discussed this with João Frade and other professors, not only from the Portuguese Academy, but in other European countries. The convention, contrary to what is sometimes the idea, for deck requires 1 year at sea, but for engineers, only 6 months. So this is what it is. Regulation 3.1, so requires at sea engine room watchkeeping duties under the supervision of a qualified officer, etc., 6 months. While for deck, they have also these 6 months of watchkeeping duties, but they are required seagoing service of not less than 12 months. For engineers, is a combination, can be a combination of seagoing and workshop skills. But in fact, what is required is only 6 months of seagoing. And why I'm talking about this? We have found also problems during these 12 months at sea. So these are some during our inspections. So not all the onboard training is fantastic. So there are loopholes there. And in some countries even, we found or we identified situations of students on board training, and I'm telling the numbers 30 on the bridge. So this is not possible to do anything like that. Or then in the same day they report that they were navigating in the North Pole and at the same time in the Equatorial line. With fog, with bad weather, everything the same date. And the same goes to the engineers. They had the engine had a blackout that day, but then at the end, different things. So we identified this problem. And looking back from my times when I was cadet, so we had even more. We had 1 year plus first 5,500 hours, then it was reduced to 4,500 hours, but anyhow, many thousands of hours. But then I was navigating from here to Brazil, from here to the United States. 15 days there, 15 days back, on the bridge, nothing happens. And then if there is a problem, it was not the cadet who was acting, was just the officer or the captain, or if it was in the engine room, the chief engineer, whatever, any problem. But nowadays, and then it is where we start meeting the presentation of Artiel, but was not combined. I have nothing, no shareholder of that, and I'm not even, apart from being a friend of people working in maritime education and training institutions, I'm not working for a maritime education and training institution, and I know that for them this is also important, but the simulators. And I use here some photos also because we have here, these ones are from Passo d'Arcos, the new one, but there are different types of simulators that can be used. What is our proposal that we want to put forward for the STCW? For the engineers, we cannot do much in terms of the 6 months is there. We're not going to touch and propose anything. But for the deck, my idea and some of my colleagues, but this depends on the EU member states and other countries that may co-sponsor with us and that will work with us, we would like to reduce that period at sea to 6 months only. The remaining, like the engineers can go to shipyards, to workshops and work, and even to use simulators, because this, what we think is possible, provided there is the goodwill to do that, and we are not creating trouble that people don't have the feel of the sea, because there will be 6 months. For engineers, they have the feel of the sea for 6 months, or at least is what is required. The countries may require more, but 6 months is what is required at the end of the day. Nowadays, with the type of simulation that exists, and I don't mean nowadays we don't have, my time when I was studying and then starting my seagoing career, we had those simulators, we had to put the head and so on. Nowadays, it's not anything of the kind. You have full mission bridge simulators, full mission engine room simulators. You have different virtual reality simulators. The first one I saw was even in the Philippines, and it was not navigation or engine room, was to work on deck. So, and I saw as well, as part of a project, and that one was in Warsaw some years ago, was on fatigue, but that can be used for anything. So the students can go and stay. You have to have the necessary accommodation. This is a process. 2 weeks, for instance, every time in the school. And they do watch keeping, and then they go to sleep as if they were on board the vessel. They arrive in port, they use the simulator for cargo operations, and then they go and then they navigate again, communicate engine room and the bridge. The simulators today allow all this. And this is what we have been trying to discuss, trying to propose, saying that this allows the students during that period to practice what, at the end of the day, they will not practice on board, and they will face situations that probably never, not only as a cadet, but in their professional life, will find. So the simulators today allow that. And if you reduce from 12 months to 6 months, so you are increasing the opportunities for students to spend or to complete the onboard training. Of course, has to be structured, but this we'll talk later, not today, but when we have this idea put on people. Because if there are no officers, and we're talking mainly about officers, but also simulators can be used for ratings. We have to find a solution. We cannot say, oh, problem, and so on. We cannot continue with students spending 3 years in a maritime academy, and then that's it. They may have even a degree, but they cannot go to sea because they don't have the onboard training. So we have to find ways that happens. And there are, I can tell you, thousands of students that are lost because they cannot complete onboard training. More photos as this. So this is basically what we think can be done, increasing the use of simulators, this type of simulators, keeping the 6 months watch-keeping duties as it is in the convention, so they have 6 months at sea. And as you remember, I was talking one of the colleagues, Marines here, but there were others, some of them a long time ago, fortunately, were completing the academy and they were still cadets. But they were working as a second engineer, third engineer, even second mate, third mate, and they were still cadets and finishing the academy without onboard training experience at all. So we want to keep this onboard experience, but in fact it's not working. The situation as it is not working now. And of course this requires a lot of issues to be tackled. The preparation of the exercises, the performance criteria for the exercises, etc. That are findings that we have identified. So it's just not, okay, replaced by simulators. We need to pay attention to the type of training that is to be provided. And of course, this requires different type of, or some, to ensure some capabilities in the simulators and in the instructors that are going to work with them. So that, going back to one of the first slides, that we tackle this. As it is a waste of time for everybody, and is a waste of money for those who pay the time they spend in the maritime academies. To finalize, just an information, we publish regularly, or every year, a seafarer statistics in the EU with the number of officers and ratings when it is possible to get that number from the member states that are available for the EU fleet. So the last time we published was in June. We'll publish next year. It's based on the information we get from the member states, but we look at HUDs, not certificates, because people may have more than one certificate. So we have formulas, we have statistics to get to those numbers. This is, you can download from our website on this. And interestingly, at European level, not talking about world level, we have seen that the number of people that retire has been replaced. It doesn't mean that necessarily by Europeans, can be by Filipinos, Indonesians, or others, but there has been this, based on our statistics. But there are many more around the world who cannot really get that onboard training. And this is not provocative, it's just for you to know what's going on, and our view that something has to be done. And interestingly, we have people who are very favorable. I'm talking about maritime people with maritime background, and others, for other reasons, may not be so favorable. But based on our meetings, internal discussions, this is our proposal to try to initiate solving the problem of that situation, because no parent pays for a student or should pay for a student to be 3 years and then at the end of the day cannot get a certificate. So this is not fair, and we have to look at the situation as it is now and not as it was in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, when some of us were studying. So thank you very much, and congratulations to the Nautical Institute, and I intend to continue member for the next 30, 40, 50 years, if possible.
Thank you. Congratulations for sharing the view of the future for the view of the East ECW. So the next speaker will be Captain Hugo Bastos. Captain Hugo Bastos have a MBA in administration. Oh, sorry. MBA in administration. It's a merchant marine pilot by the Portuguese Nautical College and a postgraduate in ISEC, Healthy and Safety. About professional career, Captain Hugo Bastos is seagoing officer, as I told. Have experience in tankers and passenger and was captain in the tugboats. He's a lecturer in the Portuguese Nautical School and it's a chief nautical officer in the Mystic Investment Holding, executive board member of the group of the companies, Mystic Cruise, Mystic Ocean, Douro Legend, Douro Heritage and Douro Azul. He also member of the COM, the Clube dos Oficiais da Marinha Mercante, our partner, and member of a Sessão de Armadores Marítimos da Marinha Mercante, AAMC, desculpem a abreviatura, member da Liga Naval and board of the Alumni Nautical College. So you have the floor and we wait, we have time. Yes. Meanwhile, we will inform that the bar in front of this palace, we have a bar with one of the famous drink in Portugal, we call ginginha. So don't leave the conference without try the ginginha. It's the next door in front of the Palace of the Independence. So it's a small one, but it's very typical one. And the bar and the coffee, it's one of the most famous in Portugal to eat the ginginha. I don't have more stories, so. So maybe during this time, I will request Captain John Lloyd to present our book of the 50th anniversary of the Nautical Institute. We have a stand outside. It's a great book here, and we will try to show you. Meanwhile, we are trying the presentations. If you don't mind, we make these improvisations just for the book, our book, just for explain a little bit about and speak a little bit about our book.
I have been saved by our presenter being fully prepared. However, if you wish to see this outside, it's very good. Lovely pictures, especially of the chief executive.
Thank you very much. Okay, Captain Hugo, you have the floor.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation and for your resilience, because the time is not easy. We are fully aligned with the other presentations. It's excellent panels, previous, and I try to do my best about my presentation. I start my presentation with a small film with our lifestyle and lifestyle of passengers and crew members. Okay, I just present this. this is our lifestyle normally. At the moment, we operate 45 ships around the world in river vessels and 5 ocean-going vessels, passengers. This is our fleet now that we manage at the moment. My presentation will be focused at human resources. I speed up, and we are talking about IMO conventions and seafarers, the IMO bases, as you know, SOLAS and MARPOL, you know, and conventions related to safety and security. We are talking about these kind of conventions. When we are talking conventions related to seafarers training and life on board, we are talking now, and this is very important for us, STCW, IMO, Bologna, that the previous presentation talked about that, and MLC 2006 and ILO. What is a seafarer? With the definition of MLC, seafarers means any person who is employed and engaged works in any capacity on board ships to which this convention applies. And for us, it's very important to explain in a passenger ships, we have this division, deck, engine, human resources, because in a passenger ships, we have a lot of crew members. We are talking sometimes in 1,000, 2,000 crew members on board, and a hotel division. And one of the questions is, why work on a ship? And we have some phrases, wages and possibility to save money, cultural interaction and lifestyle, and travel possibilities. And nowadays we have ships with 40 nationalities, different nationalities on board. And this is a lot of people in the same space and communication and different lifestyles and this and that, and it is very interesting and is a challenge. And about Portugal. About Portugal, we need to employ foreigners. This is very important because don't have capacity to supply the ships. And I think this is a problem or a challenge around the world. And now I present some example of functions on board cruise ships. And this is all the functions on board, and I present in a fast way to show you, because we have a lot. I try to explain to the guys that. Okay. This is different functions on board that we have at the moment. When I start the negotiations with the ETF and unions, I don't believe that it's necessary all these kind of functions on board. I don't believe. But when the other guys tell me, no, we need this, we need that, we need this, okay. And now I put all these for this presentation, okay. And after I show these functions, I saw the examples on board with the CBA we signed with the ETF documents. And everything is combined and is in their documents to pay on board the payroll. And we are talking in the end of the story. Okay, this is a lot of people. I have a summary. Okay. Nowadays, in our fleet, we have 230 positions on board, different functions on board. This is amazing. This is incredible. And we need to prepare all these people to supply our ships, our fleet, and to renewal when these guys go to the holidays. This is the point. And this is a big challenge. And we need to give certification for all these people and certifications and this and that. This is a big challenge for the owners today in the passenger ships. This is our reality nowadays. It's a big challenge. And what we need and encourage about the DNA Mystic. We are trying to find motivation, innovation, and proactivity and teamwork of our crew members. This is a challenge every day to keep the right persons, and after that to retain the right people in the company. This is a big challenge for us. And challenge for the future, how to cope with the new technologies without giving up your brain. This is a big challenge because we need to connect the brain with the eyes of the crew members, and sometimes it's not easy to combine this link. And the autonomous ships are increased on board, computers, IT, ECDs, all these kind of things. But in the Mystic ships on our fleet, we continue to encourage astronomical navigation and other traditional methods, because for us it's very important to keep the old methods combined with the new technologies. It's very important, don't lose these kind of things. Besides, like the cyber attacks, cyber security, it's very important to keep the traditional methods to ensure good safes on board and good practice. And now, about that, I finalize my presentation with a film with our people on board working.
Estou na Douro Azul desde 2013 e finalizei a minha 6ª época como assistente de direção. O dia-a-dia a bordo é intenso, temos que gostar muito daquilo que nós fazemos, todos os dias temos desafios com os nossos passageiros, coisas novas para aprender e tentar sempre dar o nosso melhor para os nossos passageiros saírem daqui satisfeitos.
Trabalho na Douro Azul há 5 anos, uma empresa que investe na formação constante de todos os colaboradores. Iniciei como camaroteira durante 2 anos, depois passei para a recepção durante 1 ano. Entretanto, a empresa, devido à minha formação constante na área do housekeeping, deu uma oportunidade de passar a governanta. O housekeeping é uma equipa que trata de toda a limpeza do navio, cabines de passageiro e temos uma lavandaria a bordo, onde lavamos, secamos e tratamos de todas as roupas, quer de passageiro, quer de tripulantes. Todos nós precisamos de ser mimados.
O meu percurso na Douro Azul começou por um navio mais pequeno da companhia, menos exigente, 3 estrelas, em que trabalhei como empregada de mesa. No entanto, foi-me dada a oportunidade de passar para o bar e ter formação na área.
Nas cozinhas da Douro Azul, cada dia é um dia diferente. Cada cliente tem o seu nível de exigência. O nosso serviço é de 5 estrelas, fine dining, e os clientes trazem expectativas muito elevadas. A nossa função é de elevada responsabilidade e temos que fazer acontecer para que o cliente possa ser satisfeito.
A minha função consiste na preparação e supervisão do serviço buffet e mise en place, onde todos os detalhes são muito importantes. O horário é por turnos. Começa pela manhã com o serviço de pequeno almoço, seguido de almoço e jantar, naturalmente com pausas para descanso.
Conforme dizemos aos nossos passageiros que se sintam em casa, nós, tripulação, também nos sentimos em casa.
As nossas cabines têm ótimas condições, com boas comodidades, televisão, internet, tudo aquilo que o passageiro tem, nós também temos.
Temos vários espaços de lazer. Temos a mesa onde podemos jogar algumas cartas. Combinamos quase todos os dias irmos lá fora para irmos jantar, apanhar um pouco de ar e conhecer também as terras que existem Douro acima e Douro abaixo.
Aproveitámos os locais onde atracámos para sair, divertir e naturalmente conseguimos criar fortes laços de amizade.
Também temos uma atividade super divertida, o loading, onde se demonstra o verdadeiro espírito de equipa e camaradagem.
Trabalhar na Douro Azul é bastante interessante. Conseguimos conhecer pessoas de diferentes partes do mundo.
É uma oportunidade única de ganhar a experiência na área de hotelaria e turismo.
Somos uma equipa pequena, o que possibilita também um maior convívio, uma entreajuda em departamentos. Nos tempos livres aproveitamos para conviver.
Geralmente fazemos boas amizades, que ainda hoje perduram.
Trabalhar na Douro Azul é um orgulho e um privilégio enorme. Trabalhar numa empresa de referência e notoriedade nacional e internacional no âmbito do turismo e hotelaria. Comecei a trabalhar na Douro Azul em 2011 como maître d', fui promovido a diretor de navio hotel. Exerci esta função durante 6 anos. Hoje em dia sou assistente de direção de operações. A Douro Azul dá muita importância à formação. O meu exemplo é um dos muitos que poderia citar de oportunidade de evolução na carreira interna nesta empresa. Trabalhar nos navios não é de todo uma tarefa fácil, mas acreditem, é um desafio muito aliciante.
One more thing. We started Mystic Cruises at 2019, 3 years ago, and we start with the World Explorer. And at the moment, about the cadets, we embark more 60 cadets in our fleet. This is a challenge for us, but this is our compromise to the Nautical School and for all the people after the complete the degree of the Nautical School, we employ directly or the most of them. This is the point. Okay, thank you for your presence, and I finalize. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Urbas. Great presentation. So next speaker, and the last one, will be the Dr. João Batista. João Batista came from Maritime Professional responsible for Seafarer Certification Department from Euromar. Leadership and team, and also operation manager of the Manning Agency, Maritimes Manning, Portugal. So João Batista, you have the floor when you are ready. So thank you for coming and good presentation.
So good afternoon. First of all, one more time, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's such a pleasure to be part of this panel. And before I start, I just want to say something. It's a pleasure to learn and share this experience with these old speakers, very experienced people, and thank you very much for this. I am representing Euromar, Portugal heading to Europe's top 3 ship registries. It's the title. I'm presenting Euromar, and I'm proud to speak about the Portuguese flagged ships being a Portuguese citizen. Since 2013, Portugal is increasing their registered fleet as well as its quality, and at the same time decreasing the age of the same fleet. Now we are going to speak about fleet statistics, showing how the Portuguese flagged ships grew and have developed its quality. Environmental concept, honestly, we spoke a lot today about these environmental concepts, so I will try to speed up this part. But resuming some ideas of how to achieve some more green shipping, which today is the topic of the industry, to reach zero carbon shipping. United Nations Sustainability Goals, we will also hear about some ideas not only for environmental increased performance, but also sustainability in general. We should not forget that sustainability also covers social and governance elements. And vision for 2025. We as Euromar have a vision where the Portuguese international ship registry can be at 2025, and we'd like to share with you our goals. So we are proud that nowadays we can say that Portuguese flagged ships are of highest safety standard. The average age of MAR registered fleet is below 10 years, while in 2013 the Portuguese flag was still grey listed in Paris and Tokyo Mo. Since 2014 is white listed and climbing positions up every year, and we are continuously improving. Even ICS, the International Shipowner Association, in its annual flag state performance table grades Portugal as one of the best existing flags. And here the only missing item is the US SIGI Qual Ship 21, which we expect to reach by June 2023 next year. What we are even more proud of is, while the total number of ships within European flags unfortunately decreased substantially by over 1,000 ships since 2012, the number of ships registered in Portugal increased by about 700%, or in other words, 600 ships. This is certainly due to the joint efforts of, first of all, the Portuguese Maritime Administration and the International Portuguese Ship Registry in Madeira, as well as other stakeholders of the Portuguese Maritime Cluster, such as FESMAR, PSP, regional and central government, and last but not least, Euromar. Here we can see which European flags grew and which decreased its tonnage from 2013 to 2022. Malta, Denmark, and Portugal increased its tonnage, with Portugal having the biggest growth. Denmark growth certainly can be credited to fleet growth of a very well-known container line, of course. I can confirm that Portugal has registered a great number of Cape-sized bulk carriers and as well post-Panamax container carriers since 2013, and even ultra-large container carriers since 2020, adding a lot of tonnage. All the other European flag states have decreased their tonnage since 2013, unfortunately. Interesting is not only the growth, but also the answer to the following question. Where do the ships come from? And 70% of the ships registering in Portugal came from non-European flags, such as Liberia and Antigua Barbuda. And that is exactly the vision of Euromar. Offshore to onshore. We want to make the Europe strong. Also with pride, we can say that since 2013, we have registered almost 25 million deadweight tons in Madeira. I would like also to point out that more than 166 ship owners choose Portugal to be their flag. Here we can see that the Portuguese registry did not only grow with any ship, but grew healthy. In Europe, Portugal has the youngest fleet. Even comparing with major international flags, Portugal is amongst the top flags as far as average age is concerned. We are proud to be in a peer group together with Hong Kong, Marshall Islands, and Singapore. And I also would like to emphasize that the Portuguese fleet's average age is younger than Panama, Liberia, and Bahamas. With this growth, Portugal has become the 5th biggest European flag, according to deadweight tons, trend upwards. Portugal finds itself only after Malta, Greece, Cyprus, and Denmark. Recently, we even has overpassed Denmark. We have spoken now a lot about quality, but today we need to replace quality by environmental protection and especially carbon savings. That is why we, Euromar, believe that Portugal needs a green concept to be introduced. These green factors, these green concept factors, I guess no, I'm sure that we spoke a lot of times today. I think we can speed up this part. We spoke about carbon intensity indicator, rating by IMO, the total emission of CO2, sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter might be considered as well, social and governance aspects to the entire sustainability, and of course, more environmental topics such as underwater noise. So we spoke a lot of times today. This, I think we can speed up this part, but that's not because I'm speeding up. It's one of the most important parts of nowadays reality. When speaking about total sustainability, it might be useful to look at the 17 United Nations Sustainability Goals and see how ships can contribute to each of them. So after all, we would like to help Portugal to become amongst the top 3 ship registries in Europe. For that, certainly the number of ships will grow to 1,000 at least. However, we should not forget that the landmark of 700 was already reached. Being the second youngest fleet in Europe today, it should be possible to achieve the youngest fleet, which would also help on the environmental performance, with innovative ships being built and delivered under Portuguese flag. Of course, other environmental initiatives will be required to become European leading flag as far as emission reduction is concerned. Here, the green concept will play a leading role. Additionally, we want the Portuguese fleet not only be green, but also compliant with all the 17 United Nations sustainability goals. Nowadays, Portuguese flag administration is almost fully digital, with some items still conventionally. That is expected to be very soon total digitalized. This will help a lot to use the available resources efficiently. At the end, it is important to develop not only the flag, but also the entire Portuguese maritime cluster. However, for this, the entire cluster must work together. So today is a good day for this exactly cluster here, going for the same goal. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoy.
Very much, João Batista. So before we proceed to the final discussion, I would like to say a few words. In my opinion, and Captain Jam already know my opinion, I totally agree with the proposal, and for sure, from the Nautical Institute, have our support in IMO to proceed with the review of this DCW to reduce the time for the cadets need. Also, a few words for Mystic Cruise Company, Captain Ubash, because since the last years, this company helped so much the cadets. An example is the vessel, cruise ship vessel Vasco da Gama, have on board 13 cadets. So this is an example, and we hope in the future we can have more examples like this, 13 cadets. So it's a nice amount of cadets. So congratulations for the Mystic Cruise and all the group to support that cadets. And the challenge for João Batista is we are available for sure to support Euromar and hope not only the increase of the flag, but you can increase the officers and the deck cadets from the Iberian Peninsula. So we are available to work together with Euromar to increase the officers and the deck cadets and engine cadets and the ETO cadets. So, thank you. So now we will open the question and answers if you have any questions before we go to Jinjin. One question. Captain Plácida Conceição, we need to come in the front, sorry, to have the microphone.
Okay. Thank you again for your presentation and the topics presented here. My question is to Jan Vega for EMSA. I'm from the Naval Academy, and a few years ago, we performed what you suggested now, is that we perform 7 days, 24 hours, seagoing voyage with the cadets. It was from circumstances we find, and our cadets, we don't have the problems of shipping. They have sea training all of the year in the summer and the final graduation. Still, we found one of the topics you mentioned, specific training on some domains. Being at sea doesn't mean that you perform all the kind of trainings you ask for. And one of the findings we had, it was for I think 5 or 6 years we done that, and one of the findings is one thing you suggested here. We found that we need to reframe for this kind of program. We need to reframe the staff, the lecture staff required for this kind of exercise, because it has different requirements and it is laborious, because it is only we have 4 bridges running, 7 bridges running at the same time, and the actual staff and the tutoring required to run this kind of exercise is completely different. And another thing is not only the demand, it's also the competence and the skills we're working on require different methodological and pedagogical skills from the lecturer themselves. And that's, I really appreciate that different approaches finding the same results and approach. And I think there is definitely a place for, from my point of view, for simulated training on the developing skills for the seafarers. Just a comment. And I think, I don't know if you have, and the question is, I don't know if it is only based on perceptions, or the study is required to perform some kind of experimentations or studies to address what kind of skills because we find that there's a shortage, but what are the skills required for those, for the staff, for the lettering? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate very much what you said, which in fact, as you say, so looking at two different systems, at the end of the day, we come to very similar conclusions and what needs to be done. In terms of your question regarding the staff, there are two things here. First, what exists today in the findings we have identified in terms of instructors. There were, if I look back 2005, when we started all these exercises going around the world, and we visited also some naval academies because they provide also training for STCW. We have found, not everything is bad, but an improvement in terms of the quality of the staff delivering training with the simulators. The main findings we identify are more to do with the development of exercises for simulator and the difficulties in providing evidence that this type of exercise allows for certain competence. And this is what we have been raising regularly. But this, I'm talking about what exists, what we find now. And I fully agree with you that to go further than what exists now and that we think is possible, because we have identified already. One example was Warsaw, but it was for a research on fatigue. But at the end, the process is the same. And yes, indeed, in the case of the STCW, the requirements for, is also a loophole there. The requirements for instructors and professors, assessors, they are a bit vague, still left much to the member states to define. But for this type of situation, we had some brainstorming internal among ourselves to consider what type of qualifications are needed. And definitely these instructors need to go a bit further, and they need to do the exercises, and the simulation is completely different because it can be a simulation that may last for 2 weeks, for example. So within the comprehensive review, if we succeed with this, so we have still to look at that aspect. For the time being, we identify the need for some training for instructors, but in terms of this development, and this may reply to your question, we still are in the phase of perception and what we have looking and found around what they have now and what they need to conduct this. But this would be all part of a process that first is the legislative, allowing that instead of 12 months can be 6 months, provided that the other part or equivalent is with the simulator, and that other part then would require the identification of the skills needed for the instructors. But we are not still there. So if we succeed with the first one, definitely we have to go for the second one, because I fully agree. At the current, where we are now, it may still need some adjustment in the terms of the training and the skills needed for the instructors. And this is something that the maritime academies and the naval academies around the world should look as well, and the administrations that at the end of the day accredit those institutions and approve the programs.
Thank you. Any more questions? Half a minute. Finish.
No, it's not one question, it's just for the Nautical Institute and about this proposal. We are drafting, we have a draft of this first submission, there'll be many more. And at some stage, we may approach the Nautical Institute. If the Nautical Institute agrees with what we put, can also be co-sponsors. We had the International Association of Maritime Universities, and we can have anyone or any institution, NGO, or whatever, with that status at IMO.
We would very much value the opportunity of being part of that consultation process. I think it is a step which is important, but we need to tread carefully. And I'm very happy to comment on this particular consultation that took place in the United Kingdom with respect to the use of simulation in replace of sea time. And the proposal there was simply that you should put cadets together in a bridge for a week or two and give them a month or two remission of sea service. Now, the survey we did with our members in the UK, because it was a UK consultation, found that argument to be flawed. I find it to be flawed. To put 4 unqualified children into a bridge and pretend it is replicating sea service is just unrealistic. So when we find alternative solutions using simulation, it needs to be a sophisticated solution with good exercise design, with good supervision, with mixed sea service, with mixed ranks. And I think we need to be very mindful of the human interaction that takes place on board a ship, which doesn't happen in the same way in a simulator. So we want to be part of that process. I think there are better answers, and there's no doubt that improving use of simulations will make better qualified officers, better prepared officers for the workplace. And we haven't got that balance right at the moment, but nobody at the moment says our officers, our cadets are too good when they come out. That there has to be improvement both in terms of the quality of the sea service, but also the onboard time in the simulators as well. So it's a blend, but I think we need to be careful when reducing the amount of what is essentially workplace experience for our qualified mariners. But yes, let's join in the conversation. We'd love to roll that out globally, as well as across Europe.
Thank you, and definitely we'll keep in touch. There is something here. First, I don't think we take that this is what comes. It's the typical thing, and we need to discuss further, not today, to take them from the workplace, because then we have already in the legislation, and that's why I refer to marine engineers. They have 6 months that they have to be at sea, and the rest not. The objective of such type of training is not necessary to put, okay, here is the simulator and you go and play. That's it. Of course, this also goes in line with what we were discussing before in terms of the qualifications of the staff, the instructors. So the instructors are supposed to be experienced mariners. So, the different type of exercises have to be planned in a certain way with the different type of people. It's just not to put cadets who are students and okay, now you have it and play. No, there have to be a program for that, so that they navigate, and they then depends after or before being the 6 months watchkeeping duties. It's something that we need to see and discuss, because they may not be completely zero experienced at sea. The objective is to have a consistent program with qualified staff that can orient them in the aspects not only of navigation, of cargo, of marine engineering, of combination bridge and engine room. So this is the point. It's not just leaving the cadets like that. So it's much more than that.
Okay, thank you very much. A question? Okay, so you can go. We will close with Captain Mark Bull, so but you can make the close from the Sociedade Histórica da Independência de Portugal.
The acronym of the Portuguese Sociedade Histórica da Independência de Portugal is SHIP. So we had the big pleasure of having the Nautical Institute with us today here. Please come again for the 75 or for the whatever. Come again, we will be most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will close. Captain Mark Bull, we will have the floor to closing remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. When we set out on this project to establish this Jubilee meeting, we came up with this idea of over the horizon, to say, where are we today and where are we going? Because in the last 3 years, we've learned an awful lot of things. It has been quoted that during times of major conflict, pandemics, or major disasters, that technology and developments take place at a very fast pace due to the urgency. And it can happen in two ways. And it can be where there are developments moving along very, very, very slowly that are suddenly accelerated, or whether there is an urgent need to design something totally new. And we've had examples of this in these last 3 years, the search for an effective vaccine against COVID-19. We've also seen the example of effectiveness of transferring production from basic engineering into ventilators to keep people alive. There was an urgency. And certain car manufacturers turned these things out and they worked. Example of recent conflict, we now question the effectiveness of a battle tank because we see so many destroyed by simple drones carrying bombs. How long are they going to survive? And the rescue of the Chilean miners not so many years ago shows what can happen if you put a lot of minds together to develop a rescue system. Logistics also moved into the domain of politicians who had an urgent need to get personal protective equipment to the medical staff in the hospitals dealing with the pandemic. And existing protocols had to be broken down due to urgency. Regulations had to change. We couldn't have a ship stuck in port because the seafarer's certificates had expired. So urgent regulations were put in place to extend these to keep urgent deliveries going. What lessons have we learned from this? I hope a lot. Now the general public are asking questions. Why on earth didn't we do something like this before? And perhaps we need to think of translating that into our own industry. Take an example of satellite communications. They've been around for years, and we'd use it for voice communication and certain data, etc. But we would not use it for transferring images, and as far as videos go, forget it. But when we could not get surveyors or inspectors or auditors to ships, it suddenly took on a commercial benefit. Let us do a remote inspection. Sometimes we could do the survey inspections in port using the mobile phone system, and sometimes certain snaps at the instructions of the classification society surveyor what he wanted to look at. Audits were also conducted remotely, again using video communications, and to an extent they were successful. However, I have been on ships since, and I can tell you that the standards have fallen as far as the personnel go. So some of the other things that have been going along very slowly and nothing has happened is take the radar, the clutter, which does not allow you to use the guard zones on the ARPA, because the moment you put it on and get the clutter setting correct to identify targets, it is immediately filled up with targets in the guard zone and it's inoperable. However, the Navy do have radars with the technology to eradicate that problem. Why do we not have it on merchant ships? And then autonomous ships people, you can then start your program going, because until that problem is sorted out, forget it. There are also regulations that need attending to. SOLAS Chapter 5, Regulation 25 talks about navigation safety, and it says that there will be an angle of vision from right ahead to 2 points of the beam on either side from the conning position. However, the regulations don't tell you where the conning position is. So how is it possible? If we take the modern ship where everything is clustered around 2 chairs and the displays, it's quite obvious where the conning position is, but it should be stated on some certificate so some surveyor can come along and say, your visibility complies. I heard today comments about bridge wings. Why do we need bridge wings? Why do we need these vast spaces when we put the navigational equipment together and it's basically the equivalent of 4 screens side by side, and we could have a bridge like a high-speed craft with all-round vision from the conning position. And we can put cameras on the bridge wings for docking, superimposed with a Doppler log, so giving you a fore and aft speed and sideways. Rocket science. We talk about conducting remote audits using the voyage data recorder. Has anybody considered, especially Europeans, the Data Protection Act? Has anybody asked any of the officers who are being audited by VDR if they are in agreement with being audited in that way? Nobody would object for an accident investigation because that was why it was put on board. But to carry out a voyage data audit, I'm sorry, I do not agree with it. And secondly, what is the big thing that is missing? And that is the visual. The threatening look from one senior officer to a junior. Yeah. You can't detect that. And also the amount of time that it requires to go through the data in, say, a 12-hour download really negates the commercial effectiveness of that audit, because it takes you about 5 times the number of hours you're looking at to come out with a useful interpretation of the data. I honestly believe we are on the threshold of something new if we perhaps change our approach. And there are some really interesting approaches being adopted. The use of drones on board ship. So instead of having to clamber up the inside of the holes on bulk carriers to inspect the steelwork, we can now use a drone with a camera to look at all the frames, to look for wastage. We can do draft surveys using a drone instead of somebody crawling down ladders or getting into small boats. And the best one I heard was from Commodore Nick Nash of Princess Cruises. They used drones for man overboard. Man overboard launched the drone and the second mate goes to the bridge wing and positions over the people while they're going all through the business of turning the ship around. So, my hope is we do not return to the status quo and try to return to the comfortable way we were doing things before COVID took off. I think thinking out of the box should become part of our agenda now to see if somebody's got some really good ideas to take things forward. Now, I think the idea of simulator training is very good, but how much does a simulator cost and how many hours does an individual get on the simulator? because I think they use groups, so that it depends on how big the group is of how many hours you get on the simulator. Has anybody thought of approaching the video game makers? Could you make us a collision avoidance video game and put through some repetitive exercises until they get this collision avoidance maneuver right? What would be the cost comparison of getting a video game maker doing that against the cost of one of these full mission simulators, which could then be used for the real thing, which is getting the full bridge team? Bridge team management. What are we talking about in bridge team management? Because at the end of the day, there is one person that is going to make the decision. Do I speed up? Do I slow down? Do I stop? Do I go right? Do I go left? It doesn't matter about all the big team, but you put the modern instrumentation together and all of a sudden, we have a bridge team of 2. Because we've made the bridge itself very small. We don't need all these things. We have instruments giving us the data. And finally, one thing that we must remember, let us not forget the crews of the ships and their needs. COVID-19 brought out the absolute worst in their treatment. And if we expect the best from them, the worst we give them is unacceptable. And there are some really simple solutions, but unfortunately, they take high-level actions to make them work. I don't know what your passports have inside, but the British passport has a page saying observations. Imagine that the IMO issued each seafarer with an IMO crew number, which could be stamped on the observations page in the passport with the words seafarer, core worker, important worker, whatever it is. And then the IMO Secretary General approaching the UN Secretary General to approach all the governments and say, please train all your border staff to understand what this means. Do not impede their transit to or from ships. Difficult? I don't think it would be particularly difficult to create a database at IMO with a unique crew number for every seafarer. But as I say, that requires high-level impact. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have seen where we are, etc. I am overwhelmed by all the information that we've had in the last 2 days, from when we first went through the doors at EMSA to the last presentation this afternoon. And my heartfelt thanks to all the speakers for this effort you have given and your presence today. I thank all the sponsors who've helped us create the meeting, and I thank all the attendees for coming along to listen. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, so we will close our event and we will invite all of you to go to our stand to take some Seaways magazines and some information there on the table, and hope you can join us in the Iberian branch. We want to increase the number of members. We have 100 and we want to achieve 200. So this is our chance for next day. So I will ask also to give back the Leinard and the Navy's badge on the entrance, and we will give you a gift from fine pilots. Captain Sana brings a gift for all of you, so we will change. You give us the Leinard because of the plastic to be ecological, and we will give back you a gift. Okay? So thank you for coming, and hope to see you in the dinner and next meeting. Thank you.